This podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to provide medical advice. It exists only to entertain and to inform. Welcome, everyone. This is Poor Historians, a podcast misadventuring into the archives of medical history and beyond. Each show, we dissect a history of medicine topic from the past to learn a little something about how medicine got to be the way that it is today. I'm Dr. Max, and I'm joined here by my good friends and colleagues, Dr. Aaron.
Yo, what's up?
And Dr. Mike.
Hey, what's up?
Why do you do that? Why do you do that?
What?
So,
I was just following his lead.
How do you want me to say hello? Hello.
I couldn't tell.
Welcome to another episode.
Hi, guys. Welcome to the pod.
Well,
Just do a quick fit check before we start.
we are normally joined by our medical history intern, Alba, but we had to give her a show off.
Due to our restrictions.
Yeah, she was duty hour restrictions and she was losing her mind spending too much time with us. So she had some other stuff going on. We'll give her a night off. Fine. I think that's fair. Don't you, Mike?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
I need some time away from myself as well.
No, you're here.
Hello, me. It's me again.
Mike's just doing bits. He's just been doing bits before we
That's
started
Dave
recording.
Mustaine.
No, I know that, but you've been doing voices to yours. It's very concerning, honestly.
But you guys were chuckling.
He's in a good mood, man.
He's in a place. Well, speaking of good places, let's. I got a little bit of a shout out to one of our fans, and that goes to longtime listener of the show, as far as I'm aware, Jay, who was kind enough to send us a gift box of things that she made. She sent us several medicine-themed magnets, which were pretty sweet, a pair of earrings, which Alba fought me for and won, and
What move did she use? What was her finishing?
It was RKO out of nowhere. That would definitely be her style. But just a little collection of nice things that Jay makes, and so it was just really cool to receive that. And we're not saying send us presents, but like we got a present, and it feels pretty good for the show.
Though. Yeah, we're not very good gift givers, but we're good gift receivers. So,
so either way, it was very kind of you, Jay, to do that.
Yeah, they were really cool.
And we also wanted to say, and this was not, Jay did not ask for this, but we were happy to say that she does have an Etsy shop. We'll put a link to it in the show notes just for that. That was us offering. That was not her asking. So the kindness shall be repaid thus. And go check out her stuff and see if you enjoyed it as much as we did. Again, thanks, Jay.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
Definitively should.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Really
yeah,
nice.
we looked at it together.
Cool.
We're like, wow.
I was like, oh, wow,
cool stuff.
look at that.
Yeah. We were like, who do you think the earrings are for? And yeah, they were for Alba. It turns out I did confirm that.
Mm-hmm. I did have my ears pierced at one time.
I have one ear pierced.
So did I. I had one ear pierced.
I have my
Which one?
left ear still pierced.
Double pierced. That's the whole thing, right? I didn't
Did you
even
have
realize.
gauges, Aaron? You feel it?
No.
You strike me as a gauge guy.
What? No.
How did that ever become a thing? I just don't get it.
Gauges?
My brother did it.
I don't know, man.
I don't know. Yeah, it was just, I don't know. Cool. I had friends with one of my best friends had gauge. I think he still does have gauges. Anywho, this isn't about fashion or body modification. This is a show about medical history.
Hey, well, this could be a medical thing. Who knows? Maybe, right? The earlobe chakra? Is that a thing?
Wow. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. We will be back in a few moments with our Stump Mike Trivia Challenge segment of the show. But before that, we're going to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Artery Inc.
Did you say spank our sponsor? Sorry, like the audio cut out.
I don't think so, but if I did, I'll edit it appropriately.
Okay, thank you.
Hey there, listener. It's January, and you know what that means. Yep, it's the midst of our annual respiratory illness season. Hospitals are packed with patients, and the people in healthcare are working hard in those trenches. With that in mind, it's nice to show some appreciation for our sponsor, Artery Inc., a Milwaukee, Wisconsin company that specializes in anatomy-inspired apparel designs and, to that point, celebrates healthcare workers. Many of their designs pay homage to all sorts of medical specialties, and whether you work in the ICU, the ER, or even Children's Hospital, Artery Inc. has something that you'd be proud to sport. Go on over to their website, www.arteryinc.com, that's spelled I-N-K, and check out the selection. If you do, please use our code HistoryPod to save 10% at checkout on orders over $35 and show your love for our show. Note that this does not apply to subscription boxes. Let's get back to the show. Oh, and Wash your hands. It's that season. All right, listener, here we are at Mike's trivia segment. This is where you send us a medical history trivia question and we throw it at Mike without any preparation or prior knowledge of what we're going to ask him and see if he happens to know the answer off the top of his head. If he does, the listener gets a medical eponym named in their honor. And if he does not know the answer with a high degree of potentially impossible accuracy, well, then the opposite of that prize happens. And so with that, we ask Mike, are you ready, sir?
I am, but I think you reversed it.
Did I?
I think you said if I get it, then they get the eponym. There's no way that anyone would ever get one.
If they stump you, you get the eponym.
I'm ready.
So with that, we have our asker of the question.
Glasgow,
Sarah?
Robin of Loxley.
Well, hey, you better be on your best behavior because Sarah is asking this question. This is a Sarah you both happen to know. That's as far as we'll go. The question originally was this, but I had to modify it because I couldn't find a concise answer to it. So the original question was, considering that we're in the season of ice and snow and slipping and falling, what was the first orthopedic surgery ever successfully performed? And I could not find a concise answer to that question because orthopedics is like crazy old if you really loosely define it. And there's like evidence of Neolithic people using splints and stuff and like doing primitive,
the first wrist,
really like doing crude amputations with rocks and stuff. So I couldn't really find a great answer. So Sarah, I hope you don't mind. I did modify the question, I think, in the spirit of what you were asking. And so the new question, or we'll say inspired question, is that it has to do with something that you guys have both seen a lot of, and that is the distal radius fracture. That is the part of your forearm towards your wrist. Okay, so that is the most popular.
It's got lots of names.
It does have lots of names. It is the most popular of the winter and all the seasons, honestly. It is very common wrist fracture. And so my question to you is, when was surgical management of that type of wrist fracture first performed for this injury?
For a distal radius fracture?
Yeah. What's the other name for it?
The first person that ever did surgery was Dr. Collies. And he had a partner named Dr. Barton. Barton and Collies both were early pioneers in operative distal radius fracture management. So the first one was performed in 1882. It was on the East Coast. What happened was that somebody fell. This lady by the name of Edith Wharton had fallen, slipped on the ice, and she had a really bad deformity. So the ER doc was just trying to get this thing reduced, and they just could not get it straight to their liking.
The 1880s emergency room doctor?
1880s, yep. So It took them a long time. So finally got a hold of the surgeon. Like, hey, we can't get this thing right. They tried. They couldn't get it right. So Dr. Barton was actually the first surgeon to do this. Collies identified the fracture. Barton did the operative repair. And looked great, and she died 2 weeks later. Final answer. 1882. Dr. Barton.
I'm never going to get past the Edith Wharton reference.
I don't know why the name popped in my head.
Do you know who that is?
It's an author of some.
Yeah, it's an author.
Wait, Wuthering Heights, right? No.
Look, you already you don't get points for answering the question correctly. You get points for the completely out of nowhere Edith Wharton reference.
I'm telling you, I don't understand how my brain synapses work.
Nobody does, my friend.
Yeah.
Well, here's the more correct answer, and that was a surgeon.
Was it Collies?
It was not Collies. I know that was a pretty big red herring. Collies did write a treatise on the fracture and like all the ways that he thought you should treat it. It is in the 19th century. I don't remember the exact years. It might have been around what you said, but the answer to this question, that is when they did the first surgical fixation of this very common fracture, which also happens when you fall on an outstretched hand, something we call a fouche. That's the acronym.
Nobody says that.
I call it fouche injury. And so it basically, the distal wrist breaks and goes, and as you put your hand out to try to stop your fall. So learn to roll.
Actually, Max, you remember you and I witnessed one of these fractures real time. Do you remember?
Oh yeah,
hockey.
Yep.
That was a great
did.
story.
And we played hockey together once, and that was. I don't think we can give the details away because that would
but
be.
It was
but
you
that was
on our bench. It was you, me, a trauma surgeon, and then the
all
one
of us
guy comes over. He's like, "That's broken," and we're staring at the guy.
we did. He did get off to get medical attention, and the best part is like every other hockey player all sitting there. We're like 2 benches full of players. Are like, we're still playing, right? Like, just to be clear, we all want to play hockey, and with that guy's blessing, we did. So that was it. Did we win that game? I think we did.
I don't remember.
I'm sure we did. But anyway, here's the answer to the surgical fixation of distal radius fracture the first time, and that was in 1908. Dr.
Pretty close.
Albin Lambot. I think you were pretty close.
He was pretty close.
He was the first to basically try and control the position of these broken wrist fragments by surgical fixation. So a lot of these fractures are very common. They have been common as long as people have been walking upright and falling. And so a lot of splinting, a lot of procedures to kind of move bones in places as best you could were already kind of done. But when these breaks and fractures were really bad, where you have a lot of fragments, that's when they started to actually use operations to fix this particular injury. And so Dr. Lambot went in and he actually used wires to fix the bones in place. So he would put wires through the back of the back of the wrist for the volar dorsal aspect of the wrist. So he would put wires through to basically go into the bone fragments and position them where they would be near the other broken fragments, and so they could basically heal together. But he was the first to do the procedure that way. And this was, you also have to kind of remember, like, surgery for bone injuries was not super common until like the late 19th century. And even then it was still new, because that's right when they started developing x-rays, so you could kind of see what you were getting into beforehand. Because before that, it was all by feel, etc. And so aseptic technique comes along with our friend, old Joe Lister. And that's when kind of orthopedics started to say, well, maybe we'll open up these injuries, and when it's needed. So there you go, 1908, Dr. Lambot, and Mike was stumped, which means we have to give Sarah an eponym. That's how it works. And so that leaves us with the eponym Sarah's sign, which I did look up just to make sure it wasn't a real one. So you didn't want to like double dip, you know what I mean? But as far as I could see, there was not one. So Sarah's sign. Now this happens to actually be an eye thing. It's not a ortho thing. And it's particular to healthcare workers, it so happens, and especially ones that spend too much time around select physicians. So it's sort of a repetitive motion nystagmus injury, if you will. It occurs when you are working too many shifts alongside certain types of doctors that like do bad impressions in the middle of the shift, or when you ask them questions as a nurse, they respond with like weird voices and dad jokes. And so they will eventually give you the helpful, correct answer. But before that happens, you get this involuntary repeating eye rolling, which basically happens over and over again for the shift. And the more shifts you work, the worry is that it can become unchecked. And if you see somebody with like their eyes permanently rolled, you got Sarah's sign, and you need to get them away from that physician who is causing this issue to be had. And I'm not here to name any physicians that are more likely to cause this than others, but it is just a real, very, very real and not made up phenomenon.
I bet I know who it is.
Yeah.
It's Dr. Provolone.
So there you go, Sarah. I hope you enjoy that eponym and really appreciate the question. And if you listener,
thank you so much for the question, Sarah. That was great. Thank you.
Make sure you keep your eyes fixed in the distance.
It just happened. I just
don't do it, Sarah. Don't roll those eyes. Well, if you'd like to send us a question and be part of the show, go ahead and use our social media website to do so, or go through our regular website. Our link will be in the show notes. Get us those questions, and we will put them in line to use. That's what I got, Mike. Well done. In that it wasn't.
Wow, 11 years. Correct country. I don't know.
You were pretty close. You were pretty close.
Dialing in. He's dialing.
I think that's as close as you've been. That's
all right. Well, as we have to talk about a medical history topic, and I think Aaron has a topic today.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
So we'll start with a little case, I think. So see what little case. Yeah. So I'm gonna start the first part of it. You can talk about what you think, then we give you one detail, which will probably give it away. So detail will come at the end.
That's how I do it.
15-year-old girl.
Like Anthony Kiedis.
Young woman.
Give it away
15-year-old young woman. Presents with onset of fatigue for 2 days, which is quite a time to hold on.
Wait,
bad
sorry.
Fatigue.
15 or 50?
15, 15.
15, 2 days of fatigue.
Yeah.
Are teenagers allowed to be fatigued?
Of the left
911,
hand.
what's your emergency?
But she also has, so we started with the fatigue. It was just some paresthesias of the left hand only. Things felt weird, tingly, just kind of tingly and weird and a little bit numb. Unusual sensation, unusual neurologic sensation.
Okay.
And then she had some double vision and felt unsteady. And then unfortunately she's thrown up a couple times as well.
Wait, was it mom spaghetti? Or her palm sweaty?
On her sweater? Yeah, no.
Because her knees are weak. You already said that.
No. Two music references in less than 30 seconds. That's impressive.
Is it? Is it?
All right. What do you guys think? Are you worried?
I don't love this story.
Yeah. No, neither one of us do.
No.
So we're going to sit there. We're going to see her on the board. Left hand numbness, double vision, weakness. We're going to be like, I got to go. I'm hungry. I'm going to go eat lunch. Somebody will sign up.
Is that why Mike's always in the bathroom on shift? He's always in the bathroom.
Always. Needle in a haystack type stuff, right? Because fatigue is so common. Yeah. And people come in all the time like, I just don't feel myself, or they're fatigued, or something doesn't feel. But then there's weird, terrible things hidden in there. So yeah. And
can I ask the patient what year this is?
It's actually pretty recent. Yeah.
I don't like that.
It's about, it's about 2000. It's in the 2000s. It's in the 2000s. 2000 Wookiee noise. Yep.
Good years.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Were they?
All right. So really? How long has it been going on? You said 2 days of fatigue?
Yeah, just 2 days. But
and all
they're
the
more worried.
Numbness and the double vision and the.
Yeah, and then she didn't seem to be able to walk quite right.
Yeah,
what part of the country are we in?
We're in the upper Midwest.
What city? Actually, don't tell me, because then I'm going to know what it is already.
How close to that city are we right now?
She is.
Damn it, Aaron. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll continue the exercise.
She's in a part of the country where the mom and the dad will tell you that she is an otherwise completely healthy 3-sport athlete, and she's never like this. She normally does well in school.
Okay. And
then they're sure she didn't do anything bad.
Okay, fine. Is there any
they're sure
fevers, infectious stuff lately?
They're sure. Nah, no fevers initially.
Okay.
Initially.
Any cuddling small animals?
No.
Okay.
Oh, I see where you're going. Yeah. Yeah.
No,
not
off,
cuddling.
but he could be throwing us off the course.
He could. Okay. He would. Okay. And she doesn't take any medicines at all.
No medicines. No allergies.
No bad
habits. That seems like a normal person.
Yeah. She does seem. You walk in and you're like, oh god, it's fatigue, and then she's completely normal. Which you know what, fatigue is real. But it's usually not an emergency if somebody just doesn't feel good.
Yeah, I think,
which is why it's
a
more frustrating. Yeah.
And no teddy bears, you said.
No teddy bears? Mm-hmm. She's not. No, she's not.
How's her neuro exam? Did we find stuff on that exam?
Yeah, she actually does. When you walk her, she does have sort of a broad-based gait, meaning that she walks kind of like a duck a little, and she doesn't walk well.
It's abnormal. Yeah. Not normal.
Yeah. So that's why we'll have people do the drunk walk. And if you're drunk, you can't do it right. And so it's kind of like being
the
drunk.
heel to toe kind of thing.
Yep. Heel to toe, touch the heel to the toe. She cannot do that well.
Not good. I don't like it. Does she, you said double vision, right? Did she have, if we move her eyes around, like follow my finger kind of style, do we get anything there?
It's not noted in the specific text. I'm going to say nothing that noticeable.
Okay, so they didn't check.
Yes.
Anytime you say that to your faculty member when you're a learning physician, they're like, okay, so you didn't check. You're like, no, I did.
I did check.
Okay, fair enough. Anything else abnormal on the neurologic exam?
No.
How about I'll do the rest of the exam. Is there anything abnormal?
There are no other abnormal findings.
Yes, I do a very quick, thorough exam.
Yeah.
You look at the skin. Are there 2 small puncture wounds anywhere on the skin? Anywhere.
No.
Anywhere.
No.
Nothing. Wow. Jeez.
Can we transfer her immediately to a children's hospital?
Yes, you can.
All right, good.
Wait, we want to get some testing first. No, let's get some testing first.
In point of fact, that's what would probably right. So she gets an MRI with these symptoms, right? So these
no CT.
Well, again, I don't have the original ER case reports. I'd probably do a scanning. I would do a screening CT on this person or offer it.
CT or head.
For sure.
I think this is a good time.
Differential. What's your differential? Like, what's your list of things?
Let's do this before we get to that. I'm going to step aside and say, I'm pretty sure everything you're about to tell us is all publicly knowledged stuff, right, Aaron?
Yes.
Let's be clear about that. So
yes, I am
in the public record.
This case is from is almost word for word from a widely available free PDF in a national journal.
Because I don't know what the exact answer is, but I think I do, and I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah. I mean, yes. So
Edgar Allan Poe.
Yes.
No, I don't think it is. I still don't think it is. I think that one was
fine.
Just.
All right.
So you said differential. So basically, what do we think's going on?
Yeah.
Or what are we worried about? Well,
so I think brain mass, like a tumor.
Gotta worry about that with
double
some of
vision,
other
specifically in the cerebellum, because we got balance issues, vision issues.
Yeah, like the back of the brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
yeah.
where the deeper issues are with our
you can
balance
get some
systems.
brainstem stuff too around there too. That would be bad. That's certainly possible. We're gonna dance around what we think it is, but we'll.
How about hyponatremia? So she gave herself central pontine myelinolysis because she drank too much water.
Now you have to define all of that. All of it.
It's when your brain explodes when your sodium level changes.
Hyponatremia.
Low sodium.
All right.
Central pontine myelinolysis. Do that one.
Brain explodes.
A tiny little part of your brain does. Yeah, the nerves get all upset because of rapid shifts in the sodium.
Not explodes, but just degenerates.
Kind of.
Swell suddenly,
Concord
kind of at a
jelly.
microvascular level. So
just look up what is it? The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. It's a great French movie. It's really light watching. It's very.
It doesn't sound like it.
I feel like you're lying.
No. All right. So you guys are all right. So
infectious.
Yep.
I think infectious is high on my list.
Yeah.
Infectious is high on my list.
And you guys were asking about where this is and so on, so you'd be a little worried about.
Yeah.
I
think one thing. I don't think it's what's happening here, but I think one thing we do live in Lyme country, and Lyme disease can produce neurologic symptoms like facial paralysis and stuff like that. I'm not saying that's what she had here, but neurologic illnesses with infectious components. So Lyme is a thing. And Lyme meningitis can cause all kinds of weird stuff.
So she has the normal MRI. She gets admitted. You follow up on her case because that's you're a good doctor and you want to know what's happening. So then about the fourth day or so, she does get a fever and she starts to get slurred speech, and she has true weakness of the left leg. She starts to get tremors of the left arm, and then the family either earlier or before remembers, or somebody says, oh yeah, I remember about a month ago we were at church and there was a bat that flew into the church window and was hurt, and she was really worried and she wanted to go help, so she went to pick up the bat and take it outside because it was hurt. And I
asked about cuddling small animals.
Yeah, I know you did, but that was going to give it away right away. So then she helped the bat, and the bat turned and bit her on the finger, and they cleaned it, and unfortunately did not get any follow-up treatment at that time. And she's had nothing for a month. So now your guys' differential, you guys were talking about what you probably thought it could be.
Can we just say what it is?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
This is rabies.
Yeah. It is rabies.
Rabies is bad. Rabies is bad. But I think this is a story that you're going to tell that's going to be not awful the whole time.
It's going to be awful. Pretty awful. Yeah.
Well,
even with the
what's
wind,
your
it's
general prognosis?
Rabies is almost universally fatal.
Yeah.
And rabies is very bad. So this is why when people, especially like if you work in ERs that are near campsites of any sort, bats find their way into places. And so if you wake up and you find a bat in your room and you're like, oh, hey, bat.
Wait, why do you have a room at a campsite?
Bunker. I don't know, bunker barracks.
It's inside your tent.
Max,
I don't know,
have you ever been camping?
I've been camping 8 times and I hated all 8 of them.
We got there early. We set up our room.
There's a
cabin.
I walked down to the ice machine and stand by the stream.
If I have to walk more than 2 hallways to the ice machine, I'm roughing it as far as I'm concerned.
Anyway, no, you're exactly
Max.
right. If people
service,
if people stop this episode and they don't listen to the rest, just hear this. If you wake up in a room with a bat, go get rabies prophylaxis. It's 100% a recommendation from the CDC. So we don't give out advice, but
yeah, this happened in med school, and it was like a guy in my class, and he ended up getting the vaccine, and I was like, this is so dumb. It doesn't make any sense. And then, as you guys know, I've got this unhealthy fear of rabies. We watched that video of that guy dying of rabies. No, I mean, like,
I think it's healthy.
It's a combination here. Bear with me for a second. It's my belief from John Hughes' 1980s movies that I'm going to be bitten by a bat and not know it. And that video of watching that guy die of rabies, the combination of those two things has made it very hard for me to be outside at night in the summer.
Like, I got news for you. You probably wouldn't know if you got bit by a bat.
No, that's not true.
People often don't know. Yeah, because
that's what they say.
It's not very painful.
It's not true.
Yeah.
It is if you wake up in a room and the bat was there.
No, I've had to Google it.
There are lots of bats around us too. I mean, they come out at night. You can see them. Anyway, so yes, rabies, terrible. It's terrible. So
that's when I go in at night.
Rabies is super simple. It's not even really probably, I don't know, is it even alive? I mean, so viruses is tiny, and this is
not a philosophy podcast.
Just an RNA virus, right? So not even half of the genetic code. It's only got like 5 genes. It's an itty bitty thing. Probably
but they're all diesel genes. Oh,
yeah. Nice. And it has this love for any animal's nervous system. So it'll get in the bite and it goes into the nervous system right away. And it uses the gaps between the cells and our own sort of mechanical structures to move stuff up the nerves, to travel up the nerves about 2 to 3 centimeters a day. So that's where the gap comes in. So this patient that we had, she got bitten, got infected, but then it only went about 2 to 3 centimeters a day up to the brain from where she got bitten on the finger. And it is, you might still reasonably say 100% fatal once you get the symptoms of encephalitis or inflammation of the brain and so on. It causes bad headaches and confusion, but this is like these words, when we use headache and confusion for normal things, they don't really give you what rabies really is. I mean, it's this terrible like hallucination and a huge amount of excessive salivation. I think even Cujo probably like went light on the saliva. There's this crazy fear of water. So it does, like, water will cause people to choke if they try to drink, like, for whatever reason.
Don't they get like really painful spasm of the esophagus?
Yeah.
I think,
so your mouth, and it'll spasm when you try to drink. So you can't drink.
Like you can't swallow.
Yeah.
Right.
And your own saliva is pooling because you literally, like, it's so painful to swallow it.
And this is that video that they made us watch. This guy, they're like, here, drink this water. Like,
that's not even, there's a second form where people can just get paralyzed. So this can also be a general paralysis. And
I didn't know about that.
There's all these other different things that it'll do with the damage. It'll damage the crazy one. It'll damage the limbic system so badly that some people had essentially nonstop orgasms for like 2 days as they died.
Yeah. Come and go.
It came up more than once. Yeah. To which Wikipedia says it could theoretically be transmitted sexually. That is not the takeaway message from this. It's terrible. Because you're doing that because it's destroying your brain. And I did not see, and I am not a microbiologist or an immunologist, but there's not a clear sense of what the mechanism is. And so how does it actually kill people? Because it is visible in the cells of patients after they pass away, or dogs after they die and such. And you can see it under the microscope, these inclusion bodies of the groups of rabies cells and such, but it doesn't cause a ton of like visible damage to the cells. So nobody's entirely sure exactly what it does, to my knowledge, from what I saw, even in journals.
Can I ask, like, what's its purpose? You know, like, you think of like the most efficient, the best.
So I think there are good aliens and bad aliens, and the good aliens,
like what I'm
put the new genetic code into the Neanderthals,
no, the point I was
going to
make
ones.
is like, no, the common cold is the best virus that's ever been created by whatever, or evolved over time. It's perfect. It doesn't kill its host. It gets to exist for as long as it wants to exist for it. It moves on. Like rabies, rabies is like Ebola. But how does rabies still exist?
Well,
if it kills the host.
So it's a zoonosis. So it's a group of diseases
within the other.
Yes, right. So there are maybe some arguments about some cases, but there is, reading through all the stuff I saw, I did not see any human-to-human transmission. So we're a dead end for this virus. It's not meant for us. It's meant for, it's really some good with animals. Dogs. That's not the actual reservoir is probably bats, but that wasn't known forever because it's so good at messing with dogs.
I think the number of bats, the concentration of rabies within the bat community is relatively low, but there are so many bats that that's kind of the biggest vector. But I think it's more likely going to affect skunks and raccoons.
Well,
at least in our area.
That's the future nightmare fuel, is that it's definitely been reported. So we're getting ahead of, yes. So it's a zoonotic disease regardless though, right? So it's it's in animals. That's the reservoir. It can affect, I think it said not elephants, which I did not verify, but almost every other sort of animal you would think of with a nervous system, it will affect. So it 100%.
Not lagomorphs.
Well, actually there's some lagomorphs.
Wait,
so wolves don't.
Imagine an elephant with rabies.
Rabbits.
That would be the scariest thing on Earth.
Scary. Skunks get it. Raccoons get it. I think the small rodents don't, but they also say that's because they would die when they got bit. So it's not real clear. It's incredibly successful in animals. It is a disease that goes so far back that it was mentioned prior to the Code of Hammurabi, which, if you think all the way back to your early,
2014? I thought you said Harambe.
The Code of Hammurabi was an early Mesopotamian legal system, right? That was, initially thought to be one of the earliest codes of law, although there are some earlier. But yeah, so like 2,000 years BC. There are mentions of penalties for owners who don't control their rabid dogs, or if their dog gets rabid and bites somebody else, there's like a tax. So it's known forever. The Greeks talked about it. It shows up in the Samhita, and I probably mispronounced that, but there's ancient Indian medical texts that accurately describe the symptoms of rabies. It's in 3rd century Chinese texts.
Yep, but then he didn't.
Yeah, it caused werewolf outbreaks and also vampirism. I think it's the definite cause of those.
Are you making that up? You're making that up.
I'm definitely making that up. Although it's been evaluated for that, but I don't think it's, lots of good prior treatments. I mean, they really did a good job. Most of these texts advise cautery of the bite sore, like where the person gets bitten.
These are the old texts, not the new ones, I'm guessing.
Not the new ones. No, this is not. No. So all of these, 3rd century Chinese, Pliny the Elder, Salius, all these Greek people, they all took a crack at what they could do to try to treat this, because once you get sick, again, still universally fatal. So
kind of cool, just to step aside, that they managed to put that together. The bite was part of it. I mean, because I guess they would have had cases where somebody got bit by something and then like 1 to 2 months later came down ill, and eventually they had to put that connection together.
Yeah,
that's just kind of a cool little thing to think about.
It's
ancients in medicine,
remarkably common, right? So there's been tens of thousands of cases of this all the time. Still, it just has never gone away. So, and it's terrifying because it's this slobbering, slathering animal that bites you. So it's a very notable event.
Oh, the closer it bites you to the brain, the faster. So maybe that, like, if somebody gets bitten on the neck, within a day or two you're having symptoms, that might have made it easy for them to put those two together.
Well, there's also, I was going to say, like, the other part of it is like, you've got your dude in ancient Mesopotamia wandering around, and then the raving mad slobbering dog bites him, and he's probably like, that can't be good. Like, what happened? that I should probably clean this wound. Like,
it's like The Walking Dead.
You're done both ways. Let's be honest. It's either got bacterial infection or not. But
you mentioned cautery though. Would that work if you burned enough of the skin?
It wouldn't have been harmful based on everything else that could have happened. Hurt. I mean, if you did it right away, it still probably wouldn't help at all. But there's some, I mean, it might have killed the local, right, if it didn't get that deep. Because current treatment now, you inject, sort of a heads up to the immune system or a binder for the rabies right into the wound itself.
Well, immunoglobulin, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Can I ask, Aaron, and I don't know if you've looked into this. So we have vaccinations against influenza, COVID. Why don't we get rabies vaccines?
I think
if it's so uniformly fatal.
Well, there is a rabies vaccine.
No, but why doesn't everybody get it along with their polio?
Why don't we all get it?
DTaP D.
Because veterinarians and like vet techs, I know, get it.
Yeah, we'll go through it a little bit.
Spelunkers.
Yeah, Aaron, why don't we get it?
I think it's
Aaron's fault.
Too
I want
rigorous.
it. I want it, Aaron. Get me one. I got bit by a bat. Give me one.
Oh,
I'm going to go spelunking
and ask you for it.
Next Christmas, Mike.
Yeah, no, I think it's because the series is too long and expensive to be considered cost effective. But that's not a great answer. I don't know.
Uniformly fatal disease.
Yes, I
for
know.
something that will absolutely kill you.
But here's the thing:
go sign up for a vet tech course and get it.
If you get treated within 10 days of the disease of the bite, that is thought to be also almost universally curative.
A bite that you may not know that you had.
Yeah, I know. There's some good reasons that, especially. And
I'm sorry, like I can't stress to the audience enough how afraid I am of rabies.
So, if you were back in the 300 BC, you might have gotten a little bit of clarified butter for your cautery, maybe some wormwood. They would take the hairs of the dog that bit the patient and turn it into ash and rub it into the wound.
The hair of the dog.
Yeah.
Is that where they come from?
I think it might be.
It is.
Yeah, I think it is.
Wow.
It's not a Bloody Mary.
No, it is not. Pliny the Elder, which we've heard of before, but got a lot of stuff wrong. He said, sacrifice some puppies and then eat some chicken poop.
Screw that guy.
Oh, there's more
I don't. You know what our audience does not love?
Dog killing. I hate it too. I did this for you.
But what if they have frothy mouths? Yeah, like.
Well, that's
different. Would you kill a rabid dog? Or would you.
But if it were obviously rabid, yes. But it's.
Hey, Max.
Okay. Wait.
Edit out the rabid part. Would you kill a dog? Yes.
In the medieval period, there was a St. Hubert in France. They had a brisk business of rabies treatment. So there was in the church, you can still go see. They had just a nail that they used on everybody. So they gave you tetanus to fight the. I'm just kidding. They used this. They took this nail and they would scrape it across your forehead, and then they would take a thread of a holy relic that St. Hubert had around his neck when he died, and then they would shove that little thread in the wound, and then they would bind it, and you couldn't comb your hair for 7 days, and that was said to cure rabies. And they charged a lot of money for this service. It didn't.
Did it work though?
Work very well. No. There was a book in the 1400s about hunting dogs, but it talked about what happens to hunting dogs and rabies, and they said find a rooster, pluck the feathers from around the rooster's anus, and place the rooster anus on the bite wound. And
wait, if the anus, you're clearing away by plucking the feathers. I get it.
Yes.
You want a good purchase of that anus.
So
this is way more thought out than I would have given it credit.
The rooster anus will suck the poison out of the wound, and if it works, the rooster gets sick and dies. If it doesn't work, then the human does. Yeah, those were all. And then there's just every poultice you can possibly imagine. They tried. It's all sorts of food and a bunch of stuff. That was the treatment. None of them work. They just don't work.
Honestly, they would have burned me at the stake back in the day because I never would have left my house. I would have been like, no, not going outside. No.
Why would they burn you at the stake?
Because they would have thought I was a witch. I would just been inside playing Fortnite the whole time.
They don't think they had Fortnite in the 1400s.
What?
It's different.
I never would have survived.
No, they lived by fortnights. It's like 2 weeks at a time.
Oh, wow. A calendar joke. New heights.
Okay, yeah. Max gave me
better
grief about the
than
music
killing
jokes.
References. Yeah, keep up with those.
Okay, so let's talk about. I'm very sad to report.
What's
the
your favorite
public health
movie?
response? My favorite food.
Marley and Me, but you just like the end when Marley dies. Oh, spoiler alert!
No.
Don't ever watch any movie with like a sweet, like, oh, here's me and my best friend. They always end the same way, so I don't watch them.
Yeah,
I loved
Old Yeller. I could just watch Old Yeller on repeat.
That was the one I was trying to come up with.
No.
Yeah, Aaron,
one time.
he's like,
I've actually never watched.
Character.
I heard about the ending of Old Yeller. I will never watch that movie.
No, there's no reason to. Oh, here, let's form an amazing bond between a human and an animal. Where do you think that story is going? It's not going a good place. They lived forever? No.
Multiple public health responses to rabies were just, let's kill all the dogs. Which is a terrible idea. They did multiple times in Victorian times, but it was always, they thought, the poor dogs. So or the dogs of the poor.
So it's really man's best frenemy.
Well, yes, in this case, 100%. They didn't know, so they're like, let's kill all the street dogs, and it's got to be related to the conditions, or the poor don't take care of their dogs, or they're mean to their dogs, so then the dogs get rageful, and then that's where the disease comes from. The French would just have dog massacres, so they just would go through these canicides, they would call them, and kill thousands of dogs. There was official advice from doctors not to kiss your dogs. They thought that might be it. There was a famous case of a very wealthy lady whose dog licked her face all the time, and they thought that maybe she had a pimple, and it came from the dog licking her pimple. So that
she would have gotten something, but not rabies.
They also had a dog tax. So they came up with a dog tax in both Britain and France in the 1800s.
Tax the rabies out of them.
That's right. Well, they thought we'd decrease ownership so that there'll be fewer dogs in general, because then we won't worry about it.
Well, here's how it would work, Aaron. I would forego my mortgage to maintain my dogs because I love my dogs. And
so that was one problem.
Put myself in complete financial peril if it meant I could keep my dogs and keep them safely. So that's not going to work.
That's part of it. They also, for some reason, cut it off at 6 months. So really, a lot of people just had puppies and then abandoned them. So they actually had increases in the stray dog.
How did you make it worse?
I don't know. Yeah.
Save the
terrible.
puppies.
We haven't even gotten to a case report of how this also went wrong. But there were heroes on the other side, right? So,
good.
Yeah. So... Come on back, Max. Oh, except there's a lot of dark parts of this part of the story too. I'm sorry. So
yes, keep going. I like these parts.
Louis Pasteur is the main historical medical figure who actually figured out how to treat this. So he was born in 1822 in humble surroundings in the countryside of France, but proved a gifted chemist. Wikipedia mentions he might have had dyslexia, so he was a poor student initially, but he stuck with it. And he figured things out. So pasteurization is where you would know the name. He figured out how to keep things fresh for longer. He wanted to do science that helped people. So he spent 30, 40 years working on different kinds of vaccines. And right around the 1880s or so, he turned his attempts to rabies. But before that, with Jenner having figured out smallpox, he did a lot of work on anthrax and some other livestock diseases. And there's some famous demonstrations where he inoculated multiple cows with anthrax culture.
Gave them anthraxes.
He's trying to do PC.
So at the time, this is 1800s, right? They don't have the genome sequenced, and they don't have fancy big buildings where we can't see what's going on.
Because they were lazy.
Yeah, they were lazy. They didn't have that rise and grind ethos. So based on germ theory at the time,
4 o'clock in the morning, I vaccinate a bunch of cows. I give them anthrax.
So you have
a cold shower.
You have to look at an organism that you find under the microscope. Then you culture it. You grow it in something, usually like some nasty broth, like veal broth, also from baby animals.
This is my favorite broth, Aaron. Don't talk.
Then you inoculate it into some other unsuspecting poor animal that then gets sick, and then you find it again. That was how you proved that this disease was causing the problem. So that's how they did anthrax and all that sort of stuff. But then they also figured out, Pasteur was like, well, instead of maybe just killing a bunch of animals, which I will do anyway, if I can attenuate the virus. So he figured out that he would weaken the virus just by letting it be, usually in some sort of drying agent to try to, and that's what he did with anthrax. He weakened it, and then he put it in a broth so it didn't make them sick. And he gave it back to these cows, and the cows survived, even though they were then exposed to live normal anthrax.
I bet that was a perfect science too.
Yeah, but it did convince a lot of people. They're like, hey, there might be something to this, apparently.
But just think about this.
He had a control group. He had a control group of cows that weren't treated, and they died. Yeah. Yeah.
But Pasteur gets to treat rabies and anthrax, and now you got people making RSV vaccines or influenza.
It's a lot less. Hey, influenza is still a real disease.
No, I know it is. But I'm just saying, like anthrax.
So does RSV. Yeah.
Flu.
It's a great band.
Mike, you just said if you were born into his generation, you wouldn't leave your house, though.
No, I absolutely
You'd just be sitting there with his microscope.
And I wouldn't care if it was a vaccine. I'd be like, I'm stuck in the house. I'm playing Fortnite. I'm not leaving. Like you can.
But so what Pasteur had to do for rabies would bother both of you tremendously. So they had to.
Let's not be graphic.
Well, okay.
Just lean into it. Yeah. No, he's got to do it.
No, so this had to be on faith, though, because if you listen to you had to see the organism under a light microscope, then you had to grow it, then you had to re-give it back, then you had to find it again. You couldn't do that with viruses. They're too small.
Right.
So the the definition of a virus is it's a crazy definition. It's the reverse. It's a disease that you can culture and inoculate, but you can't see it. And it will go through a filter for a bacteria. So they made filters for bacteria. So they defined
you're saying
it as
this
something.
Was like the early definition of
like
virus.
the early definition, like in the 1890s.
I think we nuance it a little more now.
We're a lot more nuanced now. But that's how they initially. So he had to just be like, yes, I believe on faith that this thing is here. They had to isolate it. So what they did is there were lots of rabid dogs around. People would give them rabid dogs and they would try to hold down the dogs and not get bitten and take the saliva to get the virus from culture. Unfortunately, try to be gentle here. They eventually figured out it was going to the brain. So they just took the brains and then they started
fairly gentle.
Isolating it. They would use rabbits instead of dogs to start isolating this. And they would actually inoculate the rabies directly around the brain of this poor rabbit. And then it would get sick and then they would do it again. So they made it stronger and faster. So it would be like, it would grow in like a week. And then they would sort of grow these rabbit brains with a bunch of rabies virus in it. And that was what they used to make their initial inoculum, their initial vaccine. So it was actually little bits of rabbit brainstem that they would dry for anywhere from 1 day to 14 days in a special vial. And then they would mix it back into veal broth and inject it.
Why veal broth? Like just because there's not enough,
man.
like
I don't know. It had to be another baby
torture.
Animal.
This is veal. Like let's get the saddest
veal
broth we can find. Yeah, I get it though. It's
But yeah. So I mean, this is a crazy lab. It's a crazy thing that he did, and understandably, they did not like it. They did not like it.
But what
there
happens?
Were many people that did not like it.
Yeah, a lot of animals get killed doing this. But what happens if Louis Pasteur dies? Then we're screwed. Humanity is screwed.
I mean, so animals are fine with that.
I think it was, they're probably like, we're doing fine on our own. It says, I think 1885, I believe, was the actual first human inoculation. It was a 9-year-old boy, Joseph Meister. That's also publicly available, although he's been dead a long time. He was bitten severely. No, he survived. He was bitten severely, and he received 14 injections of desiccated rabbit brainstem in a veal sauce, and they injected it into the wall of the stomach for some unknown reason. I have no idea why they would do this. That I don't know.
How would they find
why. How did they find that?
How would they find it? The wall of the stomach.
No. The wall of the abdomen. Sorry, the hypochondrium. Okay. Right. I'm trying to just.
I'm picturing like in the wall of the stomach. I'm like, how in the world?
He survives and he recovers and he becomes a celebrity. And then Pasteur opened up a clinic that was treating 80, 90, 100 people within a month, and they had this whole artisanal. Well, over the next few months, like this artisanal operation, they would like have the name and a logbook, and then they would take this little piece of desiccated rabbit, see it like brainstem, and inoculate it based on how far they were into the treatment. And the idea was that you would get a fresher brainstem compared to its rabies infection each day, so it would get stronger and stronger and stronger theoretically. I think a lot of that's kind of. Seems like hogwash.
The basics of this, like as gruesome as they are kind of brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as not crazy. Being able to know what you're dealing with exactly, the nature of it, but applying a principle you have discovered for another virus that you can't see is extremely inventive.
And to be right. And to be right.
Yep.
A lot of faith. Yeah. Wikipedia does not believe in this. Wikipedia is like, this is all garbage, which is interesting. It's one of the first ones where I'm like, I feel like you might, there are a lot of moral objections to what he did. Like, I think that
I'd be fair.
case, that would be very fair. But I think, no, but Wikipedia is like, this isn't even real. I'm like, I think it's pretty real. Because
like,
rabies vaccines work.
That's fascinating. What's like, that it did not work? Or
yeah, they say that he fabricated a lot of his results and that he didn't. And that Jacob Meister, the initial inoculum, I don't know what the part of speech would be there, was not even sick. Inoculant was not even sick at all.
Oh, so they're calling it a question. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
You found like other corroborating sources?
So and I put it in the show notes. We'll say it here. There's a book called Rabid, which is by Bill Wasik and Monica Murphy, which is a very interesting historical nonfiction book about rabies in general. And it goes into a lot of other things about the culture and so on. Very good. I'd recommend it. We'll put it in the show notes. But that's where a lot of this came from. And I'm like, ooh, Wikipedia didn't back this up. But yeah, so from there you got that series, and that's why I remember reading in books that the rabies vaccine was in your stomach, and then I went to medical school and I'm like, oh, it's just in your shoulder now. That actually turned out better than I thought it would, which is true. Yeah, we don't give it in the stomach
whole 14
anymore.
Shots. We used to think you have 14 shots when you first come in.
It made it even more terrifying. You're like, oh my god, even the treatment is terrifying. But now it's a cellular vaccine. It's much more controlled, and modern methods have allowed that. So,
but it's very similar. You get this series of vaccines over the course of
amount of time. It's three vaccinations over 14 days, I believe. No, four over 14 days. So
days 0,
0, 3, 7, 14. But definitely. So that is 100% a thing that people should get if they're exposed at all. So, but the question still is, can you survive it once you get to the hydrophobia, and which is what the old timey name for rabies was, hydrophobia.
Yeah, fear of water phase.
Yeah, because phase. I mean this is an encephalitis, right? It's an inflammation of the brain. We actually see that a ton. We don't see it that frequently, but there are a ton of diseases that cause encephalitis. So, but it's very distinct, right? None of the other ones I can think of would cause the same sort of crazy fear of water and the choking and all that. So,
do you think? Sorry to interrupt, real quick. And I had thought about this recently because I think about rabies a lot. But do you think that you've seen somebody that's had rabies?
Oh God, I hope
and
not.
You haven't gotten the history of like a bite, and they're encephalopathic, and they're sick, and they're infectious, and you don't know why. Everything's normal, and then they die. Do you think maybe that could have
this
been
is why I finish my charts and I don't do follow up, because
I mean, could it happen? Yeah, but I don't think it's like, how common is it in the U.S.?
It is not common in the U.S. We're tens of cases per house. Yeah, I think those people would come back, right? So the thing is, first off, if they showed up and they already are encephalopathic, you have already missed your opportunity to treat them in the approved fashion.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, if we don't think that, and we don't think rabies, and then they ultimately die, we don't do a brain biopsy, could one of them potentially have been
feasible?
Case that we missed?
So the case that we talked about at the beginning, those are the actual words in the introduction to the New England Journal article, and this is the case of a specific Wisconsin woman who is still living, who survived. So this girl, at the time she got sick, was from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. So shout out to good old Fondy. She was.
Is that up north or not?
It's not way up there.
I'm just like, it depends on what your definition of Wisconsin is.
It's not way up there. It's south of Wausau, which is the gateway to the Northwoods.
Is that the official delineation? Because I am told that Door County is not up north.
No, Door County is not up north. No,
but it's not up north because it feels different. Up north feels different.
Yeah,
up north you can have a muskie on the wall. Door
up
County
north is different than way up there, right?
Way up there is a different state. Or a different country.
Way up there is like, that's probably how they say it in Minnesota or Michigan. Is it Michigan? Anyway, yeah.
If you go straight up from where we are.
This is not up north. Fond du Lac is not, it's, no.
Just say up north. Hour and 15 minutes from here.
There are bats all over, unfortunately, yeah. So Dr. Rodney Willoughby is the sort of infectious disease doc at Wisconsin Children's Hospital, who's credited with what is now called the Milwaukee Protocol, because, fun fact, Wisconsin Children's Hospital is on a little island of Milwaukee County land. So It's sometimes called, it's technically Milwaukee, even though it's not in Milwaukee. So yeah, so he said, oh my gosh, this girl probably has rabies, once they got the history of that bat bite and the encephalitis. And the way they proved it is they did spinal tap samples, and they had evidence of antibodies to rabies in the CSF. And that is the way the CDC...
Cerebrospinal fluid.
Yeah, sorry, the fluid around the brain and the spinal cord. And the CDC was involved, and they agreed this was a diagnosis of rabies based on that criteria, but it's not autopsy proof. So I think this is where some of the controversy will come in later.
For her.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So what they did is he said, hey, I found he was trying to do everything he could. He found a study that said that ketamine has some antiviral properties in rats. And he found some other studies that suggested that rabies kills by making the cells so overexcited that they essentially go into some sort of storm or something like that. So it's the neurotransmitters between the cells get so amped up that that's how it kills people. I don't know if either of those are proven, which is another thing so he said, I'm going to put this girl in a medically induced coma. So they talked to the parents. There's documentation of informed consent. He said, hey, we can do hospice, or we can do normal supportive care, like keep her in the ICU and see what happens, but just as universally fatal, or we can try this thing. And the parents said, well, let's try the thing, which is, I think, reasonable.
I would have done too. Yeah.
It's terrifying to even think about this, right? I mean, because at that point, this kid's already in the ICU and very sick. So they did ketamine, midazolam, amantadine, and ribavirin. We'll go through those in a minute. So ketamine's a really fun party drug. It's my favorite drug. That I can think of. It is a party drug, but it's also an anesthetic, and what it does is it is a dissociative.
Therapeutically.
Yes, my favorite therapeutic use.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it is a dissociative anesthetic, so it provides pain control, and it somehow makes people not aware of what's going on. Very interesting, kind of calming thing. And then
it works by biochemical magic. Is how that happens.
Yeah, the midazolam is a sedative, and it's trying to hit one of the receptors in your brain that rabies might use to excite the brain, if that is what it does. And then the other ones are random antivirals that might have helped somewhat. But then also she was in the ICU for a straight week like this. So intensive ICU care. And what they saw was the body's response to rabies in the fluid. They tested the fluid again, seemed to be more robust a few days in. And then she started to get better. So the theory was we give her time to survive long enough for her immune system to fight off the virus. And it worked in her case. So she had about 3 weeks to a month of time in the hospital, and then went to rehab and went home in a wheelchair, but now is running independently and has recovered and is leading a life where I should have remembered exactly what she's doing, but she's sort of moved on to try to, have a completely productive full life. So they published this, and it was called the Milwaukee Protocol. Unfortunately, sadly for other folks that they've attempted this on, they've had a hard time duplicating it. So there are no other, there's multiple articles, which I also link to, which are saying this is crazy. It doesn't actually work, and it's super expensive. And their theory is that some tiny percentage of humans might actually survive rabies without care. And she happened to be one of those, that the response in the fluid was actually her doing that. And they're apocryphal stories, which are much less well backed up, to be honest, of a girl that showed up in Texas in 2010 that had positive rabies antibodies in the CSF at that time, but then was lost to follow-up, but walked out of the hospital. So they're like, oh, maybe she survived. Like, well, if she's lost to follow-up, that's usually not a good sign.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know about that. And then
what is, just wondering, I mean, we talked about it a little bit before, but the mechanism of death for these people, is it like dehydration, kidney failure because of the hydrophobia? You said that the studies that have been done with brain biopsies, there wasn't a lot of cellular damage.
Right. I think that was what was mentioned. So again, yeah, it's tough for me to, really get to be an expert in this specific subset, but it's just says coma. It's not like people go into a coma and then they die, but it doesn't seem like it's enough damage proportionate to that. Like the rest of their organs don't fail Well, they probably do if they're not getting supportive care, but the ICU,
you would think even in the modern ICU level care, if it was just you got to wait it out, you expect more people to survive. So there's got to be something else going on.
Yeah. So there's and people don't, right? There aren't other published studies that confirm that this has worked somewhere else. The Rabid book, which I mentioned, talks about Dr. Willoughby keeping a tally of people that have tried it, which he won't publish because he thinks other people should publish, and he doesn't want to take that over. That's the way it's related in the book when they talk to him directly. And in that tally, there's like 35 attempts and only 6 survivors, and only 2 of those are intact, one of which is the index case. So something definitely was different with her than a lot of other people. But so there's your happy story. It's incredibly happy for her. I mean, she survived a rabies diagnosis.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And I mean, enough. Yeah. And well known enough for Max and I to know exactly who you were talking about within the first 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Because there's not many like her, so that case.
And to have like in our backyard, kind of these people that had the balls enough to try something like that.
Yeah.
Like to go up against rabies and be like,
if you think back to our ICU episodes and stuff, a lot of breakthroughs did happen this way in modern medicine still. And they, didn't do unstructured experiments. They said, here's what we're thinking. Here's what we can try. Are you okay with that? And did. So, I mean, and it's still, this disease is not going away. And you can't eradicate there's still 53,000 deaths a year from rabies in the world. There are 53,000. How
many in the U.S.? I think it's on the number of tens.
Yeah, it's 10 or very, very few.
Yeah.
Partially because we have vaccinations and such, and people tend to get care for.
So burn your passport, stay at home.
No more sadness.
No, get your vaccination. The vaccination works, right? So it's not going in. We're not going to be able to eradicate it.
How about get your prophylactic, get your evaluation if you are in a room with a bat or you are in contact with a wild animal you didn't intend. And also don't pick up raccoons. I know they're adorable and they're all over social media, but wild raccoons definitely can have rabies.
Yes.
But if you see a nocturnal animal walking around during the day, go the other way.
Yeah. Call animal control. Go the other way.
True.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we appreciate everyone listening, and we'd love to hear from all of you out there. If you'd like to check out our merchandise or provide feedback, we can be reached through our website, www.horrorhistorianspod.com. There you can send us messages and find links to our social media sites. We do work to respond to all posts on various social media accounts and are most active over on Threads over at the moment if you want to get in touch with us. If you want to participate in the show, use our site to send us a medical history trivia question. We'll pose it to Mike, and hopefully you win yourself an eponym. If you do have time, please go and leave us a nice 5-star review on iTunes or whichever platform you choose. And if you do enjoy what we're doing, take a moment and tell someone about the show. Consider working it into your next game of Pictionary or Categories. I don't know if people still play those. They still play those?
Heck yeah.
Pictionary?
Yeah. Nice. Well, until the next time, the Horror Historians are signing out. AMA.
Horror story.